Micky Stewart is without doubt a Surrey legend. As a player, his career spanned 3 decades. He was part of the great championship-winning sides of the 1950s, and he won another championship title in 1971 when he was captain. A courageous opening bat, he scored nearly 26,500 runs, including 49 hundreds, and he still holds the record for the county for the most catches as a fielder. When he finally retired, he went to work as sales manager for Slazenger, the sports equipment company. In 1979, though, Surrey came calling again as he returned to the Oval as their first ever manager.
I mean, the last 3 years of playing, or before then, I could see that cricket was changing anyway. And before then, the captain of each county side did everything, you know. Even arranged if you're going to travel by train or who does the cars, apart from anything to do with the on the field. And I thought then that there should be the equivalent of a manager that there is in football or other sports, in addition to the captain, and that the manager, it's his pigeon. He lays it down how things are going to go at that particular county cricket club and how it's going to be organised, but most important of all, how you draw the talent within the county into the county cricket club, because we're the only country in the world where our first class cricket is played by private cricket clubs. Everywhere else they're played by the state association or the provincial association, and that's it. But ours are private cricket clubs. So I had been appointed sales manager at Slazenger's in 1975, and things had gone very well. During that time to 79, I tripled the sales of the company on the home market in the UK. And I suppose my thoughts on that 58 tram as a kid and the emotional thing, and I made the decision to come back here.
Was it a difficult decision?
Very difficult, because I also had 3 children and a wife to keep, and I didn't know at the time how rocky the financial situation was here in the club either. But anyway, I came back, and
So how did it come about? Was who made the call to you, Micky, come back?
It was Derek Newton and Rahman Sabaro came. It was a Boxing Day with snow on the ground, I think there was, that I went to.
This would have been 78.
To Rahman's house, I suppose it was 78, something like that. Yeah, something like that. But I didn't make the decision of yes until March the 1st, 79.
And you, the previous years, Surrey had finished 16th and then 17th in 78, 16th in 77 and 17th in 78. And you took over from Fred Titmus, who had been coach beforehand. But the key thing was that you weren't coach, you were manager.
Yes, I mean, I came back on conditions that I had said I'll come back under these conditions, and that was, as far as the cricket was concerned, that I ran it. That I said you're not going to change the constitution of the club, but there was a cricket committee then, and there were about 12 on that. There was 16 or so on the general committee, and having also been in business for the previous, whatever it was, 4 years, where I was responsible for the performance of the company. Then I came back here on, I said, look, it won't happen, but if at a committee meeting 11 people think one thing and I think the other, it's going to be done what I think. Otherwise, it's a waste of time my coming back.
So what state was Surrey in when you came back in 79? What did you find? You
described it, but my phone used to go at Slazenger's in the latter part of an afternoon, and from people here, and it was obviously, and especially, they were losing. It wasn't a happy place, and I thought it was very sad because, you're always going to have your ups and downs, or one or two different difficult individuals or so. But it was always a happy place here. So I made the decision to come back.
Now, you went on a pre-season tour, and I spoke to Alan Butcher about it. He went on a pre-season tour in 1979, which took in Hong Kong, Singapore and Bangkok. And Alan said you were horrified by the pre-season preparation.
I just couldn't believe. I mean, with all the problems that there were with certain individuals and how they were plot to have a pre-season tour of all places there, what you just described, Bangkok, Hong Kong, Singapore. Anyway, we went, and it was a success from a point of view, getting them together. I got to know, well, I knew most of the staff. And I will say, I knew the staff and the ability of the staff and what was here. And I can say now, if I thought the ability in the staff wasn't there, and I knew over half the staff having played with them, I wouldn't have come back.
Your captain, to start with, he'd taken over in 1978 with Roger Knight.
Yeah.
How did you get on with him? Because it would seem sort of just on the surface that you were not necessarily peas from the same pod.
Same foundation, Alleyne School and Dulwich College, old boy. Dulwich College slightly up there compared with Alleyne's. No, but we were very similar in thought about things, and particularly you might call them a Corinthian approach, because regardless of what people think that I'm a bit miserable or hard-bitten, and so most of my things would come under Corinthian sport, which I believe in, as it should be, even sport today. So we were fine. We obviously sat down. The embarrassing thing was that 2 years before, Peter Mayle asked me to come on the cricket committee, and it had to appoint a captain. They went through who the candidates were, and everybody voted for Roger, but I didn't. And I said, if we had a young professional playing staff and there were no problems, and Roger's absolutely ideal. But with what the makeup of the professional playing staff and the senior players, I'm afraid I can't say that that's the thing to do, to put Roger in charge. Anyway, and Ryman asked for I said, I'm sorry, that's what I think, I can't say. And so that was that. And then the thing started with me coming back as manager. And the minutes of that meeting went to Roger. So I was coming in, and he was aware that I was the only person
who hadn't voted
for him. Anyway, it was soon clear that when I said, look, that was what I believed in. I never knew I was going to be coming back.
What was it very clear at that stage what your position was and what his position was and what your roles were? Did you lay that down? Yeah,
well, I said, look, I think he knew from conversation in the past, when he was here, that how I thought it should be, that the manager should put everything in place. He should appoint the captain, and that before each match or whatever it may be, that the manager is organising the show, and when it comes to selecting the side, the manager sits down with the captain. If they disagree by a player or so, the captain side plays. And I said to him, I'll never say, if it didn't work out, I'll never say I told you so. That's the way I think. And it's your pigeon, from the dressing room and then. And so you're to the fore and I withdraw. But I do all the pre-season stuff and all the individual, well, what have you. Anyway, we had a good relationship right the way through.
You had three captains when you were manager. You had Knight, and then Howarth for 2 seasons in 84-5, and then Pocock in 86. Was Knight the one you worked with most successfully?
No, with Jeff Howarth was fine. Jeff Howe was a very good, tactically, captain. Very good, yes. Not the greatest manager of different sorts of personalities, but he was very good tactically.
So the first year that you're back in 1979, you came third in the championship. The next year you were second. And so something obviously that you managed to do turned a side around who'd come 16th and 17th to third and second. How did you put the joy back into Surrey cricket in those early years?
Well, to remind people why they were there and what they enjoyed, you know, from when they were kids and they loved playing cricket and they couldn't have enough of it and what have you. And that's what brings you into the game. And you've got to retain that through your career, obviously, you know, when it comes to more and more competitive and what it means of success as against failure. But most of all, I suppose in a way it revolves around the word respect. You have respect for your own performance. You have respect for the people that you play with. You have respect for the people you play against. And most important of all, you always retain a respect for the sport, for cricket.
If the championship was obviously the ultimate holy grail for you, getting any sort of silverware into the cabinet would have been pretty important to you. And you came so close because you kept getting to one-day finals and when you couldn't get over the line. Here,
4 of them, yeah.
4 of them, here we go. Where are we? 4 one-day finals. 79, Essex, Benson and Hedges, lost. 80, Middlesex, Gillette Cup, lost. 81, Somerset, Benson and Hedges, lost. And then finally, you played Warwickshire, and I think it was it the Nat West then, or was it the
I think
Gillette?
it was the first Nat West. I think
it was the Nat West.
Yeah.
And you got over the line.
Yeah.
With, funnily enough, Bob Willis as the opposition captain.
Yeah, amazing, isn't it?
What do you remember of that day at Lord's?
Well, it was always said then, like September, early starts, moisture in the wicket. And we won the toss, I think we won the toss, didn't we? Anyway, we bowled first, and Teddy Thomas bowled magnificently, swung the ball left arm over and got 5 for, knocked him over for whatever it was, and then knocked the runs off.
Must have been a great relief to finally get some silver in that cabinet.
I was fairly cool. I obviously, like crazy, wanted to win it, but I was fairly cool about it compared with winning the county championship. Sort of that was the thing, but I was pleased for them all, and they loved it. And anyway, that was the icing on the cake after 3 runners up, which mean nothing, being a runner up.
And of course, that actually was the only silver that you won in that period with you back as manager.
Yeah.
There was one other.
We were unfortunate that in 2 of those finals. The first one was ridiculous. We had no Sylvester Clark, we had no Robin Jackman, we had 3 of the main pace bowlers out of it. So we always struggling. In fact, in that first final, to find out if Hugh Wilson was able to run in and bowl his 10 overs, whatever it was. I got in to play for MCC against Tiffin's Grammar School. and he ran up. Before then, I'd managed the MCC side that played against the school the previous 3 or 4 years with Neil and Alec there. And he ran up and he bowled it. I said, what are you doing? He said, well, I can't bowl it full out at these. I said, you run up and bowl the next 2 overs, as I want you to bowl on in the final. I'm thinking if you're good. And he ran out, and did the hat trick. And the middle of the hat trick was a 15-year-old Alex Stewart. First ball. She didn't talk to me. Anyway, so that was it. Who was the other one? Oh, Monty Lynch, he hadn't been able to bat for ages. He got 100. Anyway, yes. So we were lacking. I think Sylvester only played 2 of those finals. I'm not sure.
There was one other one-day game I just wanted to quickly touch on in your management era. The 86 semi-final here, when you lost by 5 runs. Jesty scored a magnificent 100, and it was one of those games which lives long in the memory.
Yeah, he played magnificently, but in the term I used, he did half a job, didn't he? He got caught. I can remember now. He got caught on the boundary down there, and he had no need.
5 needed was 2 overs to go. And
I don't know if he was the last one out or last one.
He was the last man out.
He was the last man.
Bicknell was quite happy at the other end.
Yeah, I know that he had. Anyway.
You mentioned a name, and we really ought to talk about him because you signed him, and he was a hugely significant player in that area. In that era, Sylvester Clarke. How did you come to sign Sylvester?
Hold on, I inherited him.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. He was coming regardless of whether I was coming out. He was definitely...
He'd already been signed by the time you...
Yeah, well, I don't the paper. But I went to meet him at the airport and all that. But so I had, I met him for the first time. But I wasn't involved in in signing.
But his first season coincided with your first season.
Yes, absolutely, yeah. And I knew all about him, but if I could just come in, I met him at the airport, and there was a big guy like that, and there was this little guy carrying his bag, and Sylvester didn't have a bag. I thought, is that his mate carrying a bag? And so Sylvester, I'd spoken to him on the phone beforehand. And he said, he didn't introduce me to his mate. And I said, who's this then? He said, oh, it's a good friend of mine, Malcolm. And I said, oh, hello, Malcolm. And I thought, what are you going to do? I said, what are you? He said, oh, I'm going to come over to play cricket. I said, where are you going to play? I said, he said, oh, Hampshire. I said, oh. I said, what, do you bat? Or he said, no, I open the bowling. I thought, it was Malcolm Marshall.
So they were on the same flight.
Malcolm Marshall it was.
So anyway, Sylvester.
Yes.
A hugely significant signing because he gave you such a cutting edge when he was fit and ready to go.
Yeah.
Brilliant, brilliant bowler.
Yeah, absolutely.
But did he chuck it?
Certainly not consistently, no, anything like. And he bowled. He could bowl, come in from 15 paces, and he could come in from 5 paces, and it was the same. If you say, did he ever chuck a ball? He possibly did from there, but he certainly wasn't a consistent chucker.
And did he change everything as far as Surrey cricket was concerned?
He was the match finisher, Charles. He knocked the wickets over. He could get wickets when it helped him, and he could get wickets when it was flat as a pancake on his pace and what he did. In fact, his best year, this is probably a bit of an exaggeration, by and large, everything came in when he started. Everything came in. And Robin Jackman, was a great exponent of swing and outswing. And Jackers, he said, how do you do this and all that? With Jackers. And Jackers did this and that. And he would suddenly open the bowling out here, and he'd bowl it go wide, and the batsman would let it go, and he'd be grinning. He said, and he would go to Jackers. It went. So I said, what's all this bloody... You get in there. But he was an exceptional bowler. I sat between Barry Richards and Graham Pollock in Joburg years later, and they were talking, and what was somebody said about the quickest bowler they played against, and they said, well, it'd be a toss-up. And Graham Pollock said, I tell you who was the bowler I least liked facing and the most dangerous bowler. And Graham Pollock said, and Barry Richards said, I bet I know what you're going to say, Sylvester Clark. He said, yeah, he said, same with me.
And he terrified. Numbers 10 and 11. I mean, the minute he started warming up, you knew the innings was over, didn't you?
Yeah.
One of the most important things you probably oversaw during your time back here as manager was the implementation of the Surrey youth system. It was called the Nescafe Scheme to start with. And it was the start of the production line that produced the great side of the late 90s, the 2000s, the Browns, the Stewarts, the Thorpes, the Bicknells, both of them, and so on, Hollyoake. How did that youth system, which became the envy of counties up and down the land, how did that come into force, and who was the key player for you?
Well, it was, I mean, this is what I said was one of the conditions of coming back to do the job, to be able to do that. And so when I came in and found in the whole county in 1979, there were only 27 registered coaches, people with a coaching qualification, just 27 of them. And there was only one cricket school, and that was Alfcover's Cricket School. And therefore, the facilities that you required had to be identified. So that's what I did, along with David Gibson was very good as well. First county coach that I appointed there on that. And so we got, with the Surrey schools, bringing the Surrey schools and the Surrey Cricket Association age group stuff together instead of them being different, to get where the players were, and then to identify the schools where the kids were, and to be able to then, I appointed regional managers, and they then had to find out in their, just say they had 6 schools, what activities could go into the schools. Are the kids interested? Is there a facility where the game could be introduced to the kids, be it indoors or outdoors? The sponsorship came really from a guy, Dennis Cox, who was a former player and who was also president for a few weeks before he died. He was the first contact with Nescafe to get £2,000 from them to kick it all off, and that's how it started. So
and the likes of somebody a guy called Brian Ruby, who of course was instrumental down in the Guildford area. He was a key part of the whole thing.
Well, yeah, he was one of the readily active people in that area. Then there was Dennis Jacobs up the road at his club was Ivorians, but he also lived out towards Sunbury way. There were about half a dozen people who were very key to be able to kick it off. So it started off, and in no time at all, we had 10-week courses at 10 centres, and we had 1,000 kids involved, regardless of whether they could play or not. In fact, I slipped up. I should have changed it in a year before, identifying kids who could play and kids who were never going to be able to play, if you see what I mean.
But were you straight away aware that the likes of the Bicknells were out there, the Thorpes were out there, the Browns were out there? Did you start to get was there a feeling of excitement knowing what was in the pipeline and what was going to come through in the 90s?
Yes, but I was lucky in as much as I'd had 2 sons who had played a lot of school cricket and representative cricket. So Alec from under 15s and Neil from under 17s. Just going to watch, I knew had a bit of a nucleus of the good players who were about. So to identify talent in that way at the top end quickly, I had a bit of a start from that score. But the important thing, apart from that, was the participation thing then, because there was nothing like it's organised now in there.
You mentioned Alec. We ought to talk about him, because some people still to this day don't understand how you were able to compartmentalise your lives so brilliantly that Alex Stewart, your son, you were able to deal with him on a totally professional basis as you're the manager and you're just a player. How did you manage it? Those of us who've been parents, Micky, think that to manage your son must be the most difficult business in the world. Because let me tell you, I've failed miserably with mine.
I suppose in some way, and it was actually like this, it is an exaggeration. I never saw Alec when he was playing or when he became on the staff here as any different from Thorpe or what have you. He was a young player who I was excited about because he would had ability the same as first seeing Thorpe or Martin Bicknell or whatever.
I've heard you say that before, and it's something I've always struggled with, that as a dad you didn't get that extra little bit of nerves or excitement seeing him hit a perfect cover drive or at the start of an innings thinking, please don't get out. Because every other dad in the country, when they go and watch their son play, is a nervous wreck. And you're telling me you weren't. How did you do it?
Well, let me tell you, when I retired, right, and watched the test matches, totally retired that is, and watched the test matches on television from abroad, or I was exactly the same as you. I'd be watching it and just totally quietly, and then he might have a fish at one out, and I suddenly go, "What are you doing?" And she'd just gone, "What?" We were both watching. So, but when doing the job, I mean, Sheila had said that when he always called, if it was anything to do with cricket, and when we were living together, he would address me as manager at home, in front of Sheila or Neil. "Oh, manager, what time do, or what?" And then he'd say to Sheila, "Oh, what time's Dad coming in to dinner?" So, I don't know. But what I did do here with first David Gibson and then Jeff Arnold, if there was something he needed to work on, I got them to work with him so that the staff never saw me spending, they never had the chance to know he's spending more time with Alec than what he is with me or whatever.
1986 was your last year here as manager, because that winter, 86-7, you went off with England.
Yeah.
But you came third in the championship this year, but somebody said that actually the dressing room was quite an unhappy dressing room in 86. There was a bit of fallout between one or two players. Were you aware of that? And did you feel that your shelf life was coming to an end here, that you'd had people weren't buying in necessarily as they used to?
No, not particularly on that. We got into a state when Sylvester was not going to play because of injury, when he had a lot of injuries, Sylvester, and we signed Tony Gray, West Indian pace bowler there, on the recommendation of Jeff Howe, who was captain New Zealand against West Indies with Tony Gray playing. But if Tony Gray played, as it was laid down in the rules of the competition, that we couldn't have Jeff Howarth as an overseas player, even though he'd been with us since he was years before. And if Tony Gray played, Jeff Howarth couldn't. And that finished Jeff as captain, really, which is a very unselfish thing to do, because he rang and said, "Look, if you want," and I said to him, "Well, it means you can't play." He said, "Well, if that's the case, that's the case. But we need another pace bowler."
So you did leave in at the end of that 86,
yes,
86, and you went off to Australia with the Mike Gatting side.
Yes, I mean, I was suddenly, in fact, I think it was it Rahman that said about going up to have a talk, and then an interview with Doug Insole and Donald Carr, and to hear my thoughts on, well, just I thought the manager, well, again, I could never understand how England didn't have a manager.
Well, your time with England was a time of huge transition, really, for the national side, and you had the great success in '86-7 on the Grand Slam side, and then there were disappointments. The World Cup in '87, the World Cup in '92. I mean, that would, I would think, probably be the biggest disappointment of your managerial career, that you didn't clinch that.
Well, I mean, yeah, we had both games there for the taking, and well, you know, disappointment, yeah, but we didn't do it, and we didn't score the runs at in Calcutta, and we dropped an all-important catch.
Well, you had some pretty dodgy umpiring as well that didn't go your way.
Yeah, but Gucci dropped the sky. Gucci dropped
Imran.
Yeah. And so, you know, if you're going to be successful, there's no messing about. You do accept these chances, and you've got to take your chance, and that's it. And we didn't. So, yes, we were well sick.
Did you enjoy your England years as much as your Surrey years?
Oh yeah, very much so. Yeah, very much so. Because it was something. I mean, it was again, it was satisfying in a way. You know, in going for the 2 interviews and chats and hearing what I was saying, and even when I got the call here saying, from Donald Carr saying, pleased to say you got the job, but it will be as assistant manager. And I said, well, you've got to find somebody else, because I'm only going if I'm going as team manager. So I knew why they didn't want to do it, because it was too close to what they called football. So that was before lunch, and at tea time, he rang back again and said, then it all had to be approved by the counties. They all had a say in it, each chairman and what have you. Anyway, he rang at tea time and said, right, that is team manager. So I did the job. But again, it was only because we had lost 5-0 in West Indies, which anybody could do in those days, any county. Then we had lost at home to New Zealand and to India, which we had never done before. And that's when you think of the ability in that side of what there was to lose to those was diabolical.
Well, at the age of 60, you finally retired from frontline cricket.
Yeah,
and
I was offered to another 18 months to stay on to do another 18 months.
But you again knew that the time was right this time.
No, because personnel had changed, you might say. You know, when I was saying if you got the same people and the same voice, but personnel had changed over that time. Now, I'd always prided myself on my own physical condition and this and that, and would lead the warm-up and all that. And bearing in mind, my management team was one. Laurie Brown, there were no this coach and that coach, and money had only started coming into the game from the West Indies tour from Sky. So I thought, blimey, that was hard, or I couldn't do this and that quite as well. So that was the main reason of turning it in, yeah.
Well, you may have retired from frontline cricket, if you like, but of course it wasn't, and it hasn't been the end of your association, certainly with Surrey, because you were elected president, which was a huge honour for somebody who started off as a schoolboy member.
Yes, very much so, but we missed a few years. I finished the England job, 92, but then I had written a paper about how you identify, to restructure the age group thing. So from 92 to 97, I had 5 years working still at the board.
And in many ways, as you look back over the years, was that, do you think, arguably the most important work you did?
No, most important work was winning that series in 86, 87 with a side that was full of talent and that lost, and whereby before we went on that, before we took off, I was at the hotel before, and got the senior players in together, you know, Gattin, Botham, Howe, etc., etc. I said, look, some of you I know well, and you know me, and others you don't know me too much at all, but I know all of your records, and they are tremendous. You know, you're outstanding players, and etc., etc. You're top of the tree, but as a side, you're bloody rubbish, because they're hopeless as playing to take all conditions on. When it's easy when things are going well and you're winning or so, but when it comes hard, then your togetherness and what you got to put in as a team is absolutely vital. You know, you can be 30 degrees, you're about to bowl your 28th over, you pull one down short, the bloke's done that. If the fellow down there can't dive and get a chest on it and stop it going for 4 and it only goes for 1, that is a huge fillip to the side. And so I said, you know, if you all each produce your individual par for the course performance, we'll roll over the Australians because we're a better side than they are on paper, but it's not played on paper, the usual thing. So that was the policy, really, that whereby they were individual players. As a side, they were hopeless.
We also ought to talk about your relationship with Graham Gooch, because when I was reading ahead of this interview, he has said that his relationship and the work that you did was the foundation of the modern England.
Yeah, well, the way that it's gone, and I'm delighted that it has, his words or so. Yes, it was good that we saw things that a cricketer who is fitter, stronger, more mobile and what have you, he's not going to be a worse cricketer. He's only going to be the best cricketer that he can possibly be. Therefore, there needs to be an emphasis in that area. But not only that, the way that you would work on parts of your game which need working on to be, whether you're batting, bowling or whatever you do.
You'll be aware, though, that people over the years, some have criticised both you and Graham's approach, that it's too football orientated. No surprise, really, because both of you are huge football fans. I mean, he is a Hammers fan till he dies, and you played football with great success. Well, do you have any truck with those who say, you know, I mean, Ian Botham said in the '92 World Cup, you were overtrained, and by the time you got to the final, you were knackered.
All the other rest of the lads will laugh their socks off at that comment, because the last thing Botham enjoyed doing was running, and I never made him run. On that 86-87 tour, I never made him run, which I knew that other than sort of to warm up. But when he needed to get a sweat on and this and that, I used to arrange, first of all, little 3-a-side football matches in a restrict area, and he would never come off there until his side were in front. And the other thing was that on keeping up in, I used to have a fiver with him, keeping the ball up, and how many times and this and that, and he wouldn't until he'd won. So different ways of making him work, because his body needed to work otherwise, because he sustained huge injuries, which he, you know, magnificent cricketer, all-round cricketer, but if he'd been fitter, he wouldn't have had so many injuries. And on that trip, he was excellent. You know, he wasn't. I said, no longer are you that ping it past his head and make him get out. You've got a bowl which you're capable of doing with your ability. Mr. Consistency, and concede not more than 2 and a bit over. And he did that and got wickets as well at crucial times.
Well, you did eventually retire, and you did eventually become president of Surrey, and they've named a pavilion after you. When you look around this old place, what does it still mean to you? And what does it mean to you now to see your son doing the job that you did?
It means a huge, huge amount. It's very satisfying. I mean, you know, when they put my name to the pavilion here, just came out the blue. I thought I was going to get a tie. And they said, we wanted you to be at the AGM. And when they did, it was very emotional, and well, it's a strange feeling, really, when you think that how it all started. I'm very proud of it, and the family are, and it just, well, it's just something, you know, and I still have, even though the game's changed hugely, you know, respect for the game. To me, it's a special game, cricket, although I love football as well. All the negative things about that I don't like, but it will always be a special game with me, which I've always respected what it's meant, you know. And it also, it revolves in a way, the way I was brought up by my dad, that, you know, you never cheat, you're cheating yourself if you finish up the winning, you've not gone about it the right way.
And do you still get a buzz seeing Surrey win?
All the time, whether I'm here or not, yes. I find that I get a buzz from what happens in the middle in 4-day cricket, and I get a buzz from all the people that come and watch T20 cricket or so. Yeah, but it's naturally at my age and what the game's been to me and what it means to me, in addition to what's on the field, that the traditional game of cricket will always be with me, because it's got so many other qualities other than just what happens on the middle.